Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar. My name is McKay Allen. I'm the Director of Content and Communications at Log My Calls, and we're excited you're here today for another Log My Calls webinar. This is, I believe, the 201st webinar we've done in the last couple years, and we're excited that you've joined us today. We've got a big crowd on hand, and we've got Travis Bliffen, the CEO of Stellar SEO in St. Louis, who's going to be joining us in a moment. First, I wanted to set the scene a little bit, tell you about who we are and what we do very briefly so you understand, and then why on earth do we do all these webinars? We'll also answer that question. So first, who is Log My Calls and what do we do? Well, we do two things that marketers should care about. The first is we provide basic call tracking. So if you're familiar with call tracking, it's when we can tie a phone call to a specific keyword that was searched or a query that was searched or a page that was visited. So in other words, we know which source generated the phone call. That's very useful. And then the second thing we do, and no one really does this besides us, is we actually analyze the content of phone calls. In other words, we run the calls through our speech recognition technology, and then we're able to extract data from those phone calls. So we can tell you how many, whether or not the lead was a good lead, whether or not the lead resulted in a sale or a reservation or an appointment, or whatever your goal is with that lead. And we can even tell you if there was a missed opportunity on the call. In other words, it was a good lead but didn't convert to a sale or a reservation or an appointment. So you can actually look at all this data without having to listen to phone calls. You can even have emails alert you, for example, when there's a missed opportunity or things like that. So there's a lot of things you can do with our tools. So that's what we do. We're based in Utah outside of Salt Lake City. And then the second question is, why on earth do you do all these webinars? We do essentially 2 webinars every single week. You can see today we have Travis about social signals and SEO, which is a great topic. Last week we had Fred Valles, who's the CEO of Optimizer, he was one of the first 300 employees at Google. We've had Michael Fleischner, who's written books on SEO, appeared on the Today Show and elsewhere. So you can see we've got a lot of webinars coming up and tons of webinars in our library. If you go to logmycalls.com/webinar, logmycalls.com/webinar, you can actually see our past webinars and listen to them. So we record them, and you can go there and watch and listen. So do that. And then the other question people ask a lot is, how can I be involved in today's webinar? Well, we encourage you to ask questions. So go to the little question bar on your screen there and type in a question to Travis at the conclusion of his presentation, and then I'll read those to him. We're going to go right up to the top of the hour, so however long his presentation takes, we'll take questions until we're done. So type questions. We want you to do that. The other thing I want you to do is, as we're tossing it over to Travis here, I just want to make sure you know what that little question area is. So if everybody could type in exactly where you're calling in from today, what city, state, if you're overseas, where you're calling in from. As I said, our headquarters are in Salt Lake City, Utah. Travis is outside of St. Louis, so I want to see, okay, there we go. We've got Central Utah, Ephraim, Utah. Wow, Christy, fantastic. We've got Georgia, we've got Wixom, Michigan, we've got Tennessee, we've got New Jersey, we've got Louisiana, we've got California. We've got people all over the place. That's awesome. I like that. Kentucky, New Zealand. Welcome from New Zealand. My goodness. Good to have you. Good stuff. We always get really diverse, interesting people on these webinars, so I'm glad to see you all know where the question bar is and glad to see such a good crowd. So with that, I want to introduce Travis Bliffen. He's the CEO of Stellar SEO. He's done webinars with us before, and he just does a great job. I think they're the most in-depth and detailed SEO webinars that we've done. And we've done a lot of SEO webinars, and he just does a great job of explaining precisely why things work and why they don't, and it's just great. So we're thrilled to have him. He runs Stellar SEO, which is an SEO firm, as I said, in St. Louis, and he's spoken and produced content for publications like Search Engine Journal and others. And so we're really excited to have him. So Travis, I'm going to give you control of the screen, and I'm going to make you the presenter. You should have that now.
All right. Can everybody see my screen okay? Is that showing?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you, and it's fantastic.
All right. Hey, we're off to a great start already.
That's right. That's right. We haven't had a breakdown yet. So thanks again for joining us, Travis. We appreciate it.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, and as always, thanks to everybody for taking time out of your day to stop by and listen to what we have to say. And by the end of this, I think you're going to take away a couple things that make you glad that you did take the time to show up. So look forward to that. And unlike a lot of other people to speak about SEO. Instead of trying to add to the confusion of it and complicate it more, I'm always trying to give you the stuff that works and cut out all the background noise so that you can actually take what we say and put it into action and see some benefits of it. So hopefully this one is, the same way, and you actually, everybody here takes something away from this that maybe you didn't understand clearly before or that you hadn't thought about. On a side note, if we have any football fans, you'll see that I have a Seahawks color-themed presentation here today, and a little Go Seahawks down here in the corner. So if you are a Patriot fan, then I'm sorry, but it's probably not going to be good for you here coming up soon. With that, let's just go ahead and get right into it with the information we have here for you. All right, the big thing is where I always like to start with is, where did we come from, and where did Google come from, and where are they at now? As you can see in this image here, this was actually Google in 1998, and thankfully they've gotten a lot better than they were then. But with that, to get your website visited online and get traffic, your website has to have gotten a lot better too. So for those of you who have been around since then, you already know the changes that have happened. But for those of you who just may recently be turned on to SEO and you're just now starting to consider it as a viable option, Google started with on-page SEO, and essentially you could just stuff a lot of keywords into the metadata of a website, and then you maybe even include it in the content of the website. And next thing you know, your website would pop up at the top and you would get traffic. And it didn't take very long for Google to realize that people were abusing it and that was too simple. So that's when they started counting links. And for a while at first, it was just about volume. If you could get the most links to your site, 99% of the time you were going to rank. And then they realized, well, wait a second, maybe not all links are the same, maybe they're not all created equal. What else can we learn from it? And that's when anchor text over optimization came into play, because Google thought, well, if a bunch of sites are getting links pointed to them with these anchor texts, it must mean that it's about that topic. So that kind of led us to where we are today. Now, if you point links to a site and you use exact match anchor text or even anchor text variations that are too close, and you do that in high volumes, it's going to look suspicious, because what is the likelihood that 100,000 different sites are all going to link back to you using a pretty similar phrase if it's not your brand name? Chances are it's not very likely. So that throws up a big red flag. And the big thing I want everybody to keep in mind today is SEO is progressing. It's going to continue to progress, and Google is going to get better at what they do. So you have to stay on your toes, and you have to stop thinking of Google, or stop thinking of SEO as, a tactic or a trick or a quick win, and you really have to start to look at it as a big picture item. That brings us to today, where we're at with Google is on-page SEO matters, and content matters, and link building matters, but they can't be done in the same ways they were before. And now, adding on top of that, for the past couple of years, there have been several studies that show a strong correlation between improved rankings and social signals. Now, as you may know, just because there's a correlation there doesn't mean that it is a direct result of. But we do know that social signals are not necessarily or in any way harmful to your site. So if you can have the added benefit of social signals, and it may or may not be a factor, why wouldn't you do it? And that's what you got to keep in mind is a lot of SEO companies and a lot of people doing their own marketing, they try to narrow it down to the fewest factors because they want to take the easy way out, or they want to be lazy. And for a while that worked, but that's not the way that things are going into the future. Now, for the reasons I just talked about, in the future, SEO is going to become more expensive, because you're seeing right now, and for the past year or two, and especially into the future, you're seeing SEO change from what was a tactic, what was a short-term solution, and it's progressing to become more of an actual marketing strategy. And it's been that way for a while by reputable companies, but now the companies that were still selling the trickery-based SEO are actually starting to weed themselves out as people realize that it no longer works. The other thing that moving forward, and even right now, you have to understand is that just because you want your site to rank and just because you contact a company to help you rank your site, if your site is not worthy, if it doesn't deserve to rank, you have to be willing to make the fundamental changes. If you have a website that just rehashes old content and it adds no real value to the internet, don't expect it to rank for very long. Right now, there are still a few ways you could use where you could rank your site, but if you're looking for a long-term play, you need to start with the basic foundations, which is a website that deserves to rank. And for that to happen, it needs to add some unique value, unique insight, or have a benefit to the end user. So, if you sell shoes, there's only so many ways you can describe the same pair of shoes. So your content may not be as unique or as insightful as maybe a site that sells services, but you can have a site that's user-friendly. You can have a site that's easy to navigate and that offers the end users the least resistance throughout the entire process of purchasing your product. And in that case, that would be why your site deserves to rank, because you have a competitive edge over the other websites. And in the past, it's not necessarily been about that as much as it was about building links to a site and using other manipulative tactics to rank a website. So if you're thinking right now to yourself or in the future that you really want to be competitive in the SEO space, you need to take a look back at the foundation, which is your website, and ask yourself, what is it that makes your website unique, and why, if I was Google, would I want to show that to people? The other thing that, as we move forward, and this is what we've seen in the past, for the past 15 years, there's been an increase in factors that have an influence on SEO. Two of the big ones right now are social media and personal authority. Social signals, you hear about a lot, and it's been hotly debated for the past couple of years because of the studies that showed a correlation. The other one is personal authority. And you heard about this briefly, and it was the Google authorship program. But then once they canceled that, then people just kind of went back to assuming that they were no longer monitoring your personal behavior online. And I think that that's a big mistake, because if they created a program, authorship, which the whole intention was to associate a person with content, and then they scrapped it, they clearly thought that that could become a valuable ranking factor in the future. They just didn't have it dialed in with authorship. So don't discount personal authority. The other thing, the fundamental shift moving forward, is barnacle SEO, also known as parasite SEO. But put simply, it is when you rank another website, such as a YouTube video, a directory listing, or a social media profile, for a keyword. And the reason people do this is because when you rank your own site, or you're aggressive with SEO, then you put yourself at risk for potential penalties, especially if you're using a very aggressive approach. If you rank a third-party site like YouTube or Facebook, you are not going to get them penalized regardless of how aggressive you are. So maybe your Facebook page won't rank, or won't rank very well, but you're not going to have a penalty on your actual website that is preventing you from ranking in the future. So as penalties increase and as people get less certain about what's safe to do, more and more people are going to turn to ranking profiles in social media and YouTube videos, other things like that. The biggest problem with that is that you have to be able to track that back to see a return on it. And call tracking is actually a great tool for that when using Barnacle SEO. And Log My Calls, they have an excellent call tracking program set up, and it goes into great detail and does a lot of the work for you. even if you're not comfortable on that level yet, or you just want to test this out, there's very simplistic call tracking or call forwarding that would allow you to get some basic information. So it's definitely something that you want to set up if you plan to use this approach. And if you're an SEO provider, you need to have something like this in place so you can show your customers how you're actually giving them a return by tracking when people call from the various web properties. The last thing moving forward into the future is that SEOs are going to have to, get outside of the box and stop thinking about, well, what submission links can I do, or what a one-track mind is no longer the answer. It's important to have a very diverse approach when you're marketing a website. Because if a penalty happens to your website, and you might do everything on the up and up right now, but remember at one time using exact match anchor text to rank a website was the industry practice, and when they updated that, it got a lot of people penalized. So something that you're doing right now might be the go-to, could get you in trouble in the future. So if you're working with a company or on your own project, diversity is something that you want to integrate into that. Now, it doesn't have to be diversity in the aspect of being SEO and pay-per-click and social media. It could be diversity in that you rank barnacle properties and that you rank your actual website, and that you do link building, but you do link building to generate traffic to your site. So there are 3 different ways to generate traffic back to your site, and if one gets penalized or takes a loss, you have the other 2. On the flip side of that, you actually could go ahead and diversify with social media and with pay-per-click and SEO. But the big thing is, regardless of which avenues you take to diversify, if you're relying on just one thing to provide traffic to your site, then you're playing a risky game, and it's growing. The risk of it is growing more into the future. Here, as you'll see, Will Critchlow is actually quoted as saying, "We should be thinking about social and search as channels that need a unified approach, because the best content should appeal to both channels, and the crossover benefits, economies of scale, are potentially huge." So basically what he's saying here is kind of recapping what I said, is that when you're promoting your business, you're promoting your website, by integrating that diversity, one, it will make your content better. It will make you better as a marketer, because you have to create stuff that doesn't necessarily have the benefit of SEO. If you have a subpar blog post, but it ranks #1, you're going to get traffic to the website because of the click-through rates for as long as you rank #1. Now, if you have a subpar article and you're trying to market that on social media, you're not going to get as many, or you may at first, but once they realize that you provide subpar content, in the future they're going to ignore your clickbait type of headlines and not visit your site. So basically, as I touched on, you want to generate traffic to your site. You want to do this diversely, and having good content, integrating social channels, link building, but not link building for the old just SEO purpose, but actually building links that send traffic to your site. Those are all things that you want to make sure you're doing. Of course, as on-page SEO and technical SEO, you have to have a solid foundation, or your site's it's not going to rank. We're past the point where you can have a very poorly designed site that's not optimized, and you can still rank it using links. We're beyond that. So before you move forward, before you invest in anything else, look at the foundation that you're building upon and make sure it's solid. One thing that doesn't get talked about as much in SEO is conversion optimization. Let's face it, if I send 1 million visits to your site a month, but nobody converts, there's really not any benefit, because the big picture is to get people to your site so they can convert and turn into customers. So as part of the big picture, you need to look at where the traffic's coming from out of your diverse offerings. Is it social traffic? Is it from content marketing? Is it from SEO? And you need to optimize for those channels. Not, SEO traffic, you might be able to have a less streamlined page that maybe is not as conversion optimized, but there's a trust factor with SEO. If the traffic's coming from a pay-per-click ad, you better make sure that your landing page has all the proper trust signals in place and that it's streamlined as much as possible, because most people assume that pay-per-click advertising works solely upon how much you're willing to pay. So you don't have that natural trust. So as important as SEO and as any marketing is to think of the bigger picture and think about where the traffic's coming from and what implications does that have on how the traffic will behave once they get to my site. So here, Google cares about the big picture, and right now the big picture is on page and its links and its social signals and its personal authority and brand signals. You guys, most of you know the basics of on-page SEO. Quality content's important. The days of making a page for every keyword are beyond us. Google now understands that the page is relevant to a topic. So before, you might have a page for red shoes and a page for blue shoes and a page for yellow shoes. But now you could have a page about shoes of different colors. And Google could understand that the overall topic of the page is uniquely colored shoes. So that's a big step forward for you as a website owner and as an SEO company. As long as you are working with somebody who's willing to put forth the good content needed, that's a step forward, because you can now focus on value over quantity. Before, you would run into a scenario where you just have to produce a page for every keyword. The quality would be driven down because the volume had to go up. Now, you focus on a really good piece of content that covers all the different things, and it will have good topical relevance. The other things I touched on briefly is site speed. If you have a really slow website that loads poorly, it's going to hurt conversion rates, and kind of a result of the lower conversion rates and people clicking back to the search engines, which is known as dwell time, if they click on your result and then they click back. Also, it's debated whether or not they can measure bounce rate, but there have been some studies to substantiate that they actually can track that even without analytics installed. Either way, regardless of why it happens, you have to make a website that people don't just visit and click immediately back to the SERPs. And making sure your site is fast is one way to do this. Making sure that it's mobile ready and mobile friendly is another important way, and making sure there's a good user experience. If you invite them into a page that has to do with how you got them to the page and you give them resources, they're going to stick around. So, I ask you, instead of focusing on the minute details, is it dwell time that hurt my site, or was it, was it time on the page, or how many pages? Don't worry about the minute details, especially as an individual trying to market your site. Look at the big picture. Is my site fast? Is it friendly? And are people staying? If they are, that will be beneficial to you. As for exactly why it works, you don't have to understand that. You just have to understand if you give them a good end product, it will perform better. As Google continues to update their algorithm, the benefits of this should be even greater. But for now, they have come a long way, and so you need to focus on providing a good end experience. The other thing, and this is almost falls into a myth, is that you hear probably everywhere is content marketing, and it's all content is king. Write more content, that's the key. But more content is not the answer. Content promotion is more important than volume. If you write one blog post a year and you promote it for the other 11 months, that is going to have more benefit than if you write one blog post a day. Now, if you can write one blog post a day that's as good as the one a year, of course that's going to be scalable and beneficial. But if you're trying to produce a lot of content quickly because you think that you have to have fresh content regularly for your site to rank, stop, relax, and focus on creating a really good piece of content, and then focus on promoting it. The other basics is, themed links. Now it's really important that if you have the majority of the links to your site should come from sites that are relevant topics, because it would appear natural that those sites would link to your site. And natural is the key to not getting in trouble with Google. The other type of links are authority links. If you are a landscaper, but a really high authority site that has something to do with, well, really anything if it's an authority site, go ahead and take advantage of that opportunity because, one, it might drive traffic to your site because it's an authority link, and two, mixed in with the other themed links, there's still going to be added benefits. So sometimes it's really like making a cake. You have some ingredients and you might need a dash of this. So if the authority link isn't extremely relevant, it's okay, still do that. But again, don't get caught up on what to do. Think about, will the link send traffic to my site? And 99% of the time, if it will send qualified traffic to your site, and I stress qualified, if you have a link on a completely irrelevant page, it might send people to your site, but they're not going to convert. So again, if it will send relevant traffic to your site, then it's probably a good thing to build, because even if it doesn't have extreme SEO value, it has referral traffic value, and at the end of the day, the big picture is to get people to your site so they can convert and become customers. Link removal, the Google Disavow tool, I think is an experiment gone horribly wrong. On more than one occasion, there have been companies that have resubmitted requests to disavow, and next thing you know, one of them was pretty popular. They actually submitted the exact same information 3 times, and on the 3rd time it was approved. So one, I think there's a glitch with the system they still haven't resolved, and 2, there are just as many cases where it hasn't worked or it hasn't worked efficiently as it did. So here's what you can do instead. If you get a manual penalty, then the link disavow is probably what you need to do. If you have an algorithmic penalty, then you can go forward, and if you do a combination of authority links and social signals, I've actually seen more cases where this recovered a site faster than disavowing the bad links. So again, manual penalty, go ahead and go through the link disavow process. Your site's going to be in trouble for a little while either way. If it's not manual, then social signals, high authority theme links, the combination recovers sites quicker than going through the link disavow. And then Matt Cutts said a couple years ago that Google wants to display popular sites, not make sites popular. So if you are following the steps above and you're making the great content and you're promoting it and you've got a great website, you know, your site's going to become popular with people. And so the big picture is that you will show up higher and you'll do better than if you just try to nickel and dime and you try to use a couple of the ingredients. You're not going to end up with the cake. You're going to end up with, you know, maybe the cake batter and the frosting, but you don't have the eggs to hold it together. So if you haven't gotten the point by now that I'm trying to drive home, it is big picture. Get the big picture right, and the individual things will come and go, but your site will still perform well. By the way, in case any of you were actually Patriots fan, if you want to chime in real quick and let us know who you think is going to win in the Super Bowl, I'll be interested to know here at the end of this how many Seahawks fans we have and how many disillusioned people we have. Personal authority. This is a big one. This is not one you hear about a lot, but the Google authorship program, what it attempted to do was link you to content. And the theory behind it was this: if you were, you know, if your industry was SEO and you were tied to writing for sites like Search Engine Journal and Website Magazine and, you know, Search Engine Watch, then that would lend the credibility of those sites to you as an individual. That would in turn mean that if you posted to a less known site, it should have added ranking benefit because you are a trusted authority. Just like a website would be an authority site and would be trusted, you as a person could gain trust. So what you said would be more influential in the search results. The other thing, and people who didn't understand that, they still used it because it lets you get a picture in the search results, and that makes you stand out from the other people. So that was a side perk of it, but that wasn't the big picture. Now, a few months ago, they said the program was discontinued, and people instantly said, okay, well, it's discontinued, they must be done. So I challenge you to think a little differently than that. If they spent all the time developing a program because they saw merit in tying a person to an industry and giving that person credibility, it's because they want to be able to understand that. And if Google wants to return popular websites and they want to return the best content, they can't read. Google's not yet able to read your content and understand it and know if it's good. But what they can do is they can look at mathematical factors or factors that they can quantify, and they use those to determine the value of content. So if they can see that you write for the top 25 publications within an industry that are authority sites, then they know those sites are authority. They know that you being on those sites means that you too are likely to produce better content than somebody who does not have any name in the industry and doesn't have those associations. So that will allow them to return better content to the end user. And that is how they can do it without actually being able to read and determine the content. So this is something that, in addition to social signals and in addition to the traditional factors, that you need to keep in mind. It's not, I don't think that the program is obviously fully in play yet, and there are probably a lot of rooms for improvement, but it is definitely something that you need to keep in mind. And if you can find yourself opportunities to present your information in front of other credible sites, and so you can build those associations, then you are going to position yourself in the future, and even some benefits of it are probably coming through now, but in the near future, the benefits of that I think are going to be even better. So that is definitely something that you want to keep in mind. And even if Google totally decided to, not pay any attention to the fact that you were published on all these authority sites within your industry, the fact that you were published on the authority sites within your industry still sends people back to your website, still brings them in, and gives you the opportunity to convert them into customers. And again, big picture. That's what you want people to do. So is there any harm in this? No, but is there potential great benefits in the near future? Yes. So if you have to quantify that on the risk, it's very low risk with a very good potential payoff. So, take advantage of this and position yourself now. And the worst case scenario is that you have a lot of good referral traffic to your site and you're well known within the industry. Now, social signals. Obviously, when we talk about social signals, or most of you, when you read this webinar, you probably thought, if you're going to say that Facebook shares or +1 can rank websites, that's probably the road you went down. And true, those are social signals, but that is social signals, in just a very narrow look at the big picture. What else, if the internet is supposed to emulate a real social environment, what happens if, think about a business maybe in your local area that's very popular. What happens? People talk about it. They mention it in conversations. Maybe if, there's tweets indexed from your area, a good portion of those may mention a specific business in relation to the area. These are all passive things that we do that are not being manipulated. And if you look at the history of what Google has done, they have looked for things that were not yet being manipulated or would be more difficult to manipulate. And they have tried to take those things and integrate them into their ranking algorithm. So how many people do you know right now that, if you're an SEO, that are faking, mentions? How many people are publishing Facebook posts saying, I went over to such and such restaurant in a location, and that's just completely made up? Not very many people are faking it. So does that make it more credible in the eyes of Google when they can index it? It should, because it's not being abused yet. The problem and the disconnect is that Google has not been extremely successful at indexing all of the social media information. Several studies indicated that a smaller percentage of tweets and Facebook shares are indexed than they originally thought, and even for authority profiles, there was still a small percentage or a reduced percentage of them indexed versus what they expected would be. Now, with that being said, Google continually improves when they have a weak spot, and if indexing social signals will allow them to return better results and have a better, honest picture of your business, then they're going to continue to work on that. So if you're active on social media, you have active following on social media, and people are talking about you specifically as a person, back to personal authority, and especially if authority people in your industry are talking about you, that lends credibility to your personal authority. If people are talking about your products or your service, then that is, an unlinked citation was first mentioned as a potential ranking factor about 4 years ago, and maybe before that. So to think that in 4 years it hasn't been considered more would be, a mistake, and it's something to overlook, that you don't want to overlook. The other thing is look at what real brands do, because Google, as it said in the last slide, they don't want to make sites popular. They want to return popular sites. So if you think about what happens when you think of a big brand, they're on TV, they have billboards, they're talked about on news shows. There's just a great variety of people talking about them. Some of it's negative, some of it's positive, some of it's neutral. The important thing is, though, they're being talked about by people without necessarily being linked to. They're being mentioned, they're being shared, all of that without pointing directly back to a website for the brand. So all these things, the more Google can take these things and understand them, the better picture they will be able to provide to the end user of what is actually a popular website. So, and then one example of this was the Google patent got granted in September of last year. Now what it was mostly for is to determine what people were watching on TV at the time and use that to return search results based on the current TV programming in their area, so that they could get more accurate search results. So if you take the same kind of thought, they already have one patent in place for this, so they've explored the technology. Would it be too far of a stretch to think, we noticed that company A advertises on TV very heavily in this area, and we also noticed that there's a lot of user reviews for this company online. People are talking about them. Do you think that it would be a far cry to take that and maybe weight those in with your on-page SEO and with your backlinks to your site to actually determine how credible you are or how popular it might be? If you think about it, it's really not. It's not that far of a stretch. And the technology that would be used for, Google already has patented would be pretty close to what they would need to kind of integrate those into their algorithm. The big picture, again, back to that, is SEO is really marketing. Before SEO was a cheap trick, it was a tactic. It was a way to quickly get to the top, and maybe you would be around tomorrow and maybe your site would get hit. But marketing is defined as the action or business of promoting and selling products or services, including market research and advertising. So, as an SEO company, and if you want to call it inbound marketing, then you can call it inbound marketing if the buzzwords are important to you. The big thing is, if you are getting people from search, whether they find a third-party profile, they find a directory listing, they find a video, or they find your website, if you are attracting people who are searching for your brand or what you have to offer to your website, and you are taking the actions necessary to make sure that once they get to your website, you can bring them in as a potential client, you can convert them, you can continue the discussion with them. That is your end goal. And SEO is a support function of this. So when you're coming up with your SEO plan as an individual or as an SEO company, when you're offering it to your clients, what is the big picture? If you understand the big picture, then you'll know exactly how SEO can support the big picture and how it can be the most beneficial and yield the greatest ROI. Now, it wouldn't be fair to you guys to get you here for a webinar about social signals and not answer the question. Can you rank stuff with social signals? And, this started because I was curious too, because I've seen conflicting information on both sides. So here's what I can tell you definitively. I have taken videos and I have hit them with social signals. And by social signals, I mean I have had them shared, embedded on third-party blogs, and then continually bookmarked, social bookmarking on the top sites, and ranked the videos. And fairly quickly for a lot of videos, done with just social signals. I've tried test sites that are very similar with low competition, medium competition, and competitive terms. The medium competition terms and the high competition terms, if you continually hit them with a barrage of social signals, and by social signals I mean in the traditional sense, the tweets, the plus ones, the shares, not the new social signals that we talked about a moment ago, then you can temporarily increase the rankings, and they will maintain and increase for high and medium competition keywords for a short time. It seemed like after about 14 to 21 days of social signals, even with a continued onslaught of them, the rankings begin to go down again. With low competition, the social signals were actually able to rank the site, and some of the sites have been, after an initial blast, some of the blog sites have been ranked for a couple of months now with just the initial hit of social signals. Now, some variables in that is when a site is ranked temporarily with social signals, people find the site and they link to it. So the links could contribute, and they probably do contribute to the long-term ranking of a site. But again, big picture here, if you can use social signals to get natural links to your site because you ranked it short-term and long-term it got ranked because people linked to it, why not? That's the big picture. It's not, as you go forward, I challenge you, instead of trying to take away things and narrow it down to the very least possible work and the fewest actions you have to take to rank a website, I challenge you to look at everything you can do to improve your website, increase its rankings, and increase traffic to the website. If you do those things, then algorithm changes, those will be an afterthought, because you will have a diverse marketing plan, you will have people to your website, and, if Google decides that dwell time is no longer a factor, or they want it to be a bigger factor, in the big picture for you, that's not going to be as big of a deal. That's not going to matter, because you have people coming to your site anyway, your site's getting shared, and just like with any authority site like YouTube, the more popular you can make your own site, the more shared you can get it, the more talked about it gets, the less likely you are to get penalized. So, that's not to say that the authority sites can't get penalized. There's been plenty of those that do. But if you have a risk gauge, the more social your site is, the more traffic sources you have, the more diverse your marketing is, your risk gauge goes down. And, as a business owner, that should be your big picture, to know that if you wake up, like business owners did in 2012, and find that your rankings have dropped because of an update, that you're still having people come to your site, you're still getting people online into your sales funnel, and you're still going to thrive as a business while you work to recover your site and improve it. All right, now is the good part. My favorite part of this is I love getting questions from you guys, and absolutely my favorite part of the webinar. So I hope that I've got you guys thinking, and you've got some good questions for me. So McKay, if you're ready there, if you've got some questions that came in, if you want to shoot, I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, let's take questions for about 10 minutes if we can. Can you hear me, first of all, well?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay. So to summarize the impact of social media on SEO, I just want to go through some specific examples, and you just yes or no whether it impacts. So if I post an article we read on our blog on our Facebook page, does that alone impact SEO?
No.
If someone shares that article, does that impact SEO?
Yes. And that's where it begins.
Sorry, say it again.
Yeah, that's where it begins, is if you share it in one place, one time, that's not the impact. The impact begins the more people share it, or the more places it's shared. So if you had 1,000 Facebook profiles of your own, and you shared it on all 1,000 of them, it would have more of an impact than if you shared it on one.
Okay. what about if someone likes it or comments on it? Does that impact SEO?
Likes and comments on Facebook. Facebook of the social media profiles is the worst indexed. So likes and comments are not really a very good social signal to rely on.
Okay. Let's go through Twitter now. So if I just tweet something, is that tweet indexable, or does it need also to be retweeted as well?
Yes. If you tweet something, it can be indexed. The indexation rate, the last study I saw, was around 55 to 60%. The person tweeting it has a very, very large influence on how beneficial it is. If an authority within an industry shares or retweets something you have, it has more benefit than if you share it and you have 5 followers. And now that could be because of the add-on effect that they shared it to people, other people shared it, and somewhere in there somebody linked to your content.
Okay, that makes sense. And then talk about video. You did a little bit, and I love that. So I'm seeing more and more YouTube videos and other types of videos show up in the actual organic ranks, and it shows a little thumbnail of the video, or even bigger than that sometimes. Is posting a video on YouTube, if you optimize it with the correct tags and description and things, could that get it indexed, or does it also need to be viewed a certain number of times or shared a certain number of times on other social media platforms?
Right. So with videos, if it's very low competition, the phrase that you're optimizing for, sometimes just uploading it, optimizing the description and the title tag is all you'll need to do for it to show up.
Okay.
If there are other people that are targeting that, then you have to look at adding social signals to it. Also, with YouTube videos, the big things are, is it being watched, and what percentage of the video do they watch? How many times is the video being shared or embedded? And are there people actively commenting or engaging with the video? So those are all factors that come into play.
Okay. And then also, we've got people asking about specific use cases, or I call them use cases, but situations. Let's say you've got a blog, a corporate blog that's getting 400 to 500 visits a week.
Okay.
What would you do, steps 1 through 5, to increase the number of organic visitors? What would Travis do on day 1 through step 5 or whatever it is to increase the number of visitors?
Yeah. Well, the first thing you would do is, when you're coming up with the next content topic, is you would want to check using a program like BuzzSumo to find out what articles performed really well on that topic. Step 1. Step 2, you go to the same list of articles in the top 5 or 10 about that topic in general. It doesn't have to be the specific topic, but the general topic. You find out who linked to those blog posts. So you would just plug it into Majestic SEO or Ahrefs, and you would pull the backlinks from people that link specifically to a post about a similar topic. Number 3, you would quickly view the other posts on the topic and find out what it was that they had in common. What was the secret sauce that made all these popular? Number 4, you take that and you implement it into your own content piece, but you add unique perspective, you make it fresher, updated, you make it more in-depth, more detailed. Number 5, you email all the people that link to the other popular articles, and you let them know you have something that's better, and they will do the work for you at that point if you've created a piece of content that really stands out.
Awesome. Have you done any research or seen any research relating to the type of content Google likes? Like, obviously they like content that's going to get shared and read, like you said. But do you think length plays into it? Do you have an ideal length of a blog post, for example? Or we're seeing more and more websites, especially of technology companies, that actually have very few words on them. Like if you look at a company like Marketo's website, actually there's pretty few words on that site. Is that kind of where things are headed? What do you think in terms of length of content? I mean, what are your rules around that stuff, Travis?
Right. Okay, so Neil Patel of QuickSprout and Crazy Egg, he actually released some information he had, and it was in conjunction with another marketing, that might have been the Marketing Institute. Anyway, they did a study that showed based on the length of content, written text, what the average article was in the top positions, and it showed clearly that articles 1,200 plus words and 2,000 plus words both perform better than shorter articles in the results. The other thing that happened is, or the other question you asked me rather is, in the future, are sites going to have less text, and how does that play into it? If what people think is sometimes that in order for SEO to work, you have to have every single component in place perfectly. But the fact of the matter is, if you're getting a ton of authority sites linking back to you, and you're getting talked about, and you're getting a lot of social shares, and you're getting traffic to your site, and people stick around for a while, then the fact that you have less content on your page is not going to prevent you from ranking. Just like the fact you could write a 5,000 word article and not get any links to it, and that's not going to perform any better. So it's about the totality of things. If you look at every single aspect of your entire marketing and website strategy, and you find you got 99% of them right, the one missing element you have is in most cases not going to prevent you from performing well. So I think that if Google better understands the website, they understand its relevance, and if they can understand if a website's popular before search, like if they can learn to understand that this website's tied to this company, and this company is what people are actually looking for most of the time, then having less content on the page, or having more content on the page will not necessarily influence it, and it won't be the deciding factor.
Great to know. One more question, then we'll let you go, Travis. So when you sit down with a client and evaluate sort of what they've done and what you're going to do with them, what is the biggest SEO mistake you think companies are making?
Yeah, the biggest SEO mistake I see right now is companies that have just failed completely to stay up with the times. A lot of companies are still, here's this keyword, we'll rank you for this keyword, and we'll charge you this much to rank you for this keyword. And you literally will pay for months and months and months, and once you rank for the keyword, then that's great. If you rank for the keyword, what that leaves out is the accountability in the meantime. If you're a customer and one company comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to rank you for this keyword, and it's going to take 6 months, and in the meantime, you can twiddle your thumbs because nobody's going to find you, you're not going to be that happy. If the other company says, okay, here's the target keyword, over a 12-month period, we want to rank for these keywords, but in the process of we want to build a diversified traffic source for you, we want to leverage Bing for traffic. We want to leverage social avenues and pay-per-click avenues and other profiles and videos, and you're getting people to their site, then they're going to be happier for a lot longer than if you have a very kind of outdated one-track mind about just SEO as ranking a site for a keyword and going from there. So I guess the biggest mistake, to sum it up, is that people have yet to realize that SEO is marketing.
I think that's a great point. Is it's really the core of marketing now. Like, everybody should focus on it as really the hub of everything else they do. So, Travis, that was awesome, man. Any last words? Not last words. That indicates that I'm about to kill you, which I'm not. But any last thoughts before we close the webinar up?
Well, I'm glad to know you're not going to kill me. I thought maybe you were a closet Patriots fan, and yeah, I'm getting a little nervous now. Maybe I should get on the floor. Yeah, the last thing is, for the next year or two, you're going to hear a lot of hype back and forth about social signals, whether they work or whether they don't work. So instead of really tying yourself up on whether they're working or not, personally use social signals and get social signals and make that one of your key things, is to get people talking about you, and not just for signal's sake, but so people are actually sharing and engaging. And if you do that, then it's 100% beneficial. There's not ever a scenario where you get shared so much on Facebook that you get penalized. So whether or not it impacts SEO, and if you want to even argue to what percentage it has an impact, you can argue that when done right, it provides traffic directly to your site. So if it's sending people to your site and into your sales funnel and turning them into clients, but maybe its SEO impact is small, Is it really a bad thing? No, not really. So, let go of focusing on the headlines that say, is it this or is it that, and just focus on the big picture. And SEO and link building both are not going to die in 2015, although I'm sure that you'll read at least 100 articles or see at least 100 titles that indicate one of the two things have happened. Not going to happen, and not going to happen anytime soon. And Matt Cutts himself last year stated that they've tested a version of Google without links, and the results were much worse than with links, even though links are manipulated right now. So don't buy into that, and don't buy into any magic one-size-fits-all solution where you only have to do this one magical thing, and everything is wonderful.
That's good stuff. Travis, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, man. You can visit Travis's site, Stellar SEO, and communicate with him directly. Or if you want to reach out to me, you have my email in the webinar email. You can do that, and I'll reach out to Travis if you have questions or want to get in touch with him. We encourage you to go to logmycalls.com/webinar. And then for the last couple of webinars, we've shared a random fact that has nothing to do with anything at the end. And I got a bunch of emails that people really liked it. So here's yours for the day. Random fact. You guys probably saw this. A new study in a British medical journal found that sitting all day causes premature death, which is fantastic, and no amount of exercise can make up for sitting all day. So if you sit for 8 or 9 hours a day, doing a nice little 45-minute run in the evening will not stop you from dying sooner. So just think about that today, everybody. Ponder that, all right? Travis,
Hey,
thanks, man.
I got one thing to add to your random fact. I learned this the other day, and it's a perfect
Sure.
add-on to that. Did you know that in Denmark, if companies have over a certain amount of employees, it's required that they have desks that can be adjusted so the employees can work sitting or standing. They have free health care for everyone, and the cost is lower than health care in the United States. They spend less on it than we do per capita.
Bam. Travis throwing down some wisdom.
There it is.
Well done. Well done. Stay tuned for tomorrow with a random fact, which I don't know what it is yet, but it'll be fun. We do have a webinar tomorrow about content marketing with a guy named Bill Ballou, who's been a consultant at Google and who's taught content marketing courses for various MBA programs around the country. So it should be good. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.